Hello, everyone. I have a very special treat for you. A couple of days ago, I had the Oscar expert to talk about all the major Oscar categories, but I didn't want to leave you hanging on those other categories, so I'm here joined with the boys from Oscar Film Forecast. I got Jack and Anthony, and we're going to go and share our predictions for all those below-the-line categories. What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good. How about you?
Very good. I'm really excited to have you guys because I've been watching you guys for a while.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Your videos are very well done, and especially those Oscar science ones at the end of the year are they're crucial.
Also,
But
I
yeah.
applaud you for the commitment in your wicked thumbnail.
Oh, thank you
Oh,
so
you
much.
went
I
all
appreciate
out. Yeah, you went all out. Yeah.
Before we jump into all these categories, I wanted to get your quick thoughts because you weren't here in the last video with Oscar Expert. I wanted to get your thoughts on Best Picture. We have a few films I think on the cusp. I would say Sing Sing, A Real Pain, September 5. Those are kind of hovering around trying to snag that last spot. Is there any movies that you feel confident will make the cut or less confident will make the cut, or movies that you're worried about not making it in?
I think lots of people also have a complete unknown in that cusp at the edge there. I feel pretty confident about that one. Of the two Searchlight films, I'm feeling better about that than I am A Real Pain. I did drop A Real Pain just because it seemed a little small. It seemed like its overall nomination package is really just going to be Screenplay and Kieran Culkin. And then it was really between that or Sing Sing for me. I just felt like Sing Sing, I'm still iffy about it, but I still feel like there'll be more passion for that than A Real Pain. But it's close. It feels like there's like a top 11 for 10 spots, and it's really tricky trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I'm looking at seven contenders that I feel pretty confident in, and I agree with Jack that a complete unknown is in that seven. I think it plays to the Academy very well. I'm really torn with The Substance right now. I don't know if that's overperforming or underperforming. It did really well at the Globes, but the shortlists didn't really boost my confidence in it within the Academy. So I'm really torn with that because I do think that's a film that, could its major contenders are in these top tier categories. We're talking directing, screenplay, acting. Even Margaret Qualley's getting on the board more so than I thought. So I'm really torn with that. I feel like what it has going for it is an incredible amount of passion, which I think you need. It's at least people are talking about it, which I don't really see with September 5. It's just opening now. That's another thing with The Brutalist, which is like, a lot of our list is going to, how well is The Brutalist going to do? Well, let's see how it performs. So I definitely think the benefit of Real Pain has is that it's a strong in screenplay, it's strong in supporting actor. It could end up sneaking into that best actor if there's enough goodwill for it with Jesse Eisenberg. So that's the benefit of. Jack and I have gone back and forth with Nickel Boys. It's
I
finally
think that's
opening.
it.
We'll finally get our answer. I know Jack would want that at the top of the list.
I would.
So yeah, I think those are the ones that I have the most intrigue in seeing how they perform over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I think the thing you brought up, especially the thing that's been haunting me, is The Substance. Like wondering if maybe we're overestimating it, or because I don't know. The Golden Globes went pretty heavy for it, and I think that might have messed with my brain a little too much because I just rewatched it and I'm like, wait a second, is this really gonna crack Best Picture? Is Corley Fashaw really gonna crack Best Director? And I'm starting to get cold feet on that. I'm also on my own little island about Jacques Audiard. I kind of feel like I'm predicting the snub for him. Feel a little bit alone on that island, and I'm also getting cold feet a little bit about that, panicking. I'm like, maybe I'm making a horrible decision. Is there any, like, what do you guys feel about the director race? Is there anyone that you feel is vulnerable in this race that a lot of people have in, or is there anybody that you feel like, you know what, I really do feel like this director can make it in, and not a lot of people don't have it in?
I mean, I've been saying from the beginning, as much as I love him and would want to see him in, I do think Denis Villeneuve is it's shaky at best, because I think that we've seen recently that a lot of times they don't nominate sequel directors, and even here he wasn't nominated for the first film. So, and I've always been saying, like, I don't think the perception is that the second one is that much of an improvement. I think they're both really well regarded. So what did he do so much on the second one that would push him into a very competitive directing field? So I'm worried about him. Yeah, I just think that we're dealing with a much more independent, a much more international crop this year. Even just the movie sensibilities, like The Brutalist plays, I think, very well to the international field. So if you're looking for like, oh, what's the international, voters going to support? I think they have their picks among films that are going to be in the top contention. They don't need to go searching for the Thomas Vinterbergs and the Ruben Östlunds this year. That I think that some I think are trying to predict those out of left field choices for.
Yeah, I feel very good about the top three. I feel like Corbet, Baker, and I do feel pretty good about Audiard. I feel like every year there's like a international director from Cannes pick, and he seems like the best pick out of all the options for that for me, especially just because it's such like a big, bold vision. I think they'll attribute that to him. Then those last two spots, I'm between three different people. I feel very good about Ramel Ross. I know he's iffy for some people, but I feel like even if he misses DGA and BAFTA, I still feel like that is just like such a visionary film that the director's branch in particular will go for, kind of like a Jonathan Glazer last year. It seemed kind of similar in those vibes for me. And then that last spot, I think I'm going to go with Edward Berger for Conclave, but I'm not. That doesn't seem like a huge like directing vision. It's well done, but it's not like bold like Fargia for substance, but I'm with you guys on I'm not sure how much substance is truly going to get, so I'm sticking with
Right.
Burger for now.
Berger
Okay.
feels like Mark McDonagh for Banshees, where he
Yeah.
didn't get in for the previous film for McDonagh was Three Billboards, and that was the more showy movie that won multiple Oscars. But then the next time around, I feel like he had built up his persona and he got in for Banshees. And I think Berger, I just think there's enough, general consensus support for Conclave, and part of the directing is getting those performances and
Yeah.
really telling such a clear linear story. I tend to like looking at that like conducting, like he's conducting a great film here.
Right.
So he feels stronger to me. He's probably even maybe him and Audiard are fighting for that number three spot for me.
What about any of the acting races? Are there any of those actors that you're like, I would watch out for this actor? This person is going to surprise people.
I have a lot. I think most people are on this train now with the Marion Jean Baptiste. I think she's going to get in there just because, I mean, she's doing really good with the critics so far. I think there's a lot of passion for her performance in particular. And I think that last spot is going to come down to who gets like the most number one passion vote picks. So I feel good about her in that fifth spot in actress. I'm starting to lose. I've been big on the Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl train. After missing Critics' Choice, I'm kind of losing faith in that. If she misses SAG and BAFTA, at that point, I feel like you've got to drop her. But right now, I'm gonna have faith
Mhm.
that she can make it in there. And then I think the other big one, I think supporting actor is pretty basic. I feel like there's six people who could get in there. It's just really about which five of the six you're going for. And then supporting actress, I'm sticking with my Nickel Boys love and hype with Anjanou Ellis Taylor. I feel like she's like I call her like an emotional bomb in that film. Whenever she shows up, she just brings out I think the most emotion that you feel throughout the entire film. And a lot of her scenes are just like direct monologues to the camera that I feel like that's just actors are gonna eat that up.
I'm really interested, because you talk about Baby Girl. I'm interested to see if Baby Girl has similar box office performance to The Whale, because I think that definitely improved The Whale's
Yeah.
chances in winning those two categories that it ended up getting, and I think that could improve Nicole Kidman. Also, the box office with The Complete Unknown, because I do think there's a world where Timothy Chalamet is able to come in. Adrian Brody's already won, and maybe Ray Fiennes is a little bit too restrained, and in comes Timothy Chalamet with a showy performance. He's boosted by being in another Best Picture contender.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of love for him. So I'm looking to that race to see how that changes over the next couple weeks with its Christmas release. I'm getting behind Guy Pearce for supporting actor. I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. I think this is one of the things where we have to wait to see it open and get on more screens, because he's the sort of Sam Rockwell character actor who's been around for a while. I'm making a lot of Three Billboards comparisons today, um, but I think he is such a necessary component, and I think he's such a force in that film. I think him and Felicity Jones are very unique among the contenders this year, and I think that they could do quite well. In supporting actress, I'm really interested to see what happens with Zoe Saldana, and if Selena Gomez Rising maybe threatens her win a little bit. I think the Zoe Saldana Ariana Grande race is potentially the closest acting race between two contenders. I think actress, there are like four contenders that could pull off the win there. Will they give it to Mikey Madison? It would be really exciting. And for people who I think Jack and I both love Honora, it reminds me of the 2018 year where you had like Glenn Close, Olivia Colman, Lady Gaga. You had all these different narratives that have proven successful in the past, and it's just which one are the Academy in the mood for? We keep mentioning that like don't look for the same trends that worked last year. They like to switch it up. They like to go from Coda to Everything Everywhere to Oppenheimer, and I think the same go for the actors.
Well, yeah, last night I took out Margaret Qualley because I'm getting cold feet on substance a little bit. I took out Margaret Qualley. I put Ingenue back in. it feels a little bit more in line with the Oscars. So that's what I went ahead and did that. But okay, that's awesome. This is a lot of great insight. It didn't make me feel any better about my picks, but I appreciate it.
Of course.
Let's
of
go
course.
right into the screenplay categories. We're going to start with original. Right now, we don't have BAFTA to go off of this year more than other years. It seems like there's a lot of ineligible films at WGA, including The Brutalist, September 5, Conclave, Amelia Perez. Looking at the Globes, though, I enjoy looking at that screenplay category since they combine the adapted and the
Yeah.
original. So we only get that 6 compared to 10. But it's a good indicator of seeing kind of what screenplays are near the top. So I have a little stat that I like to bring out for the audiences. By the way, if the stats are annoying and you don't want the stats, let me know in the comment section below, and I will not do the stats. But I like stats, so I'm doing it for now. All right, good. So around 90% of the films nominated in the screenplay category at Golden Globes since 2020. I'm just going back to the early years of Golden, or more recently. Since 2020, around 90% of the films get nominated in screenplay at Golden Globes gets the nomination at the Oscars. So the exception was being the Ricardos' Killers of the Flower Moon, which were also nominated by Critics' Choice. So we're going to start with original screenplay. What do you boys have on your list?
I feel pretty good about my top 4 here. Number 1, Honora. I feel like we've been pretty confident in that the entire season, no matter how Honora performs elsewhere. This is kind of where they're going to give Sean Baker his Oscar. So I feel like that's pretty safe. The Brutalist will get in there. A Real Pain, even if it's not in picture, I feel like it will definitely get into screenplay. It's doing great with Critics Awards in that category too. The Substance, also the same, even if it misses Best Picture, I still feel like, I mean, that's the prize it won at Cannes, the screenplay. And if they don't end up getting Fargia in director, I think this is where they can honor her here. And then that 5th spot, I was really torn between Challengers and Hard Truths were the main ones between here for me. I don't want to spoil future categories, but I did look at Challengers. It's contending, it's doing very well so far in both editing and screenplay. And I looked and I was like, I can't have it in both screenplay and editing and then not have it in Best Picture, because I looked at all the past nominees, and to get screenplay and edit, I don't think there was a single film that got screenplay and editing and then end up missing Best Picture. So I was like, I have to pick between, do I think it's stronger in editing or screenplay? So spoil, I ended up choosing editing, so I went with Hard Truths for this 5th spot here, because I think Mike Leigh is a very beloved writer. He's gotten nominated multiple times. His films are actually usually stronger in screenplay than they are in acting. He got it in for Another Year, Topsy, Happy Go Lucky. They all got screenplay nominations without acting. And then Vera Drake in Secrets and Lies got screenplay nominations in addition to acting nominations. The only time one of his films got Oscar nominations and he didn't get a screenplay nomination was for Mr. Turner, which just got some tech noms. So I feel like if you have Baptiste in particular, then you should probably have it in screenplay as well, because it seems like usually if his film is getting nominated, especially above the line, that he'll get into screenplay as well. And I feel like he's a very beloved writer. So that's what I'm going with for now. You could also maybe think about September 5, but I don't really super believe in that film. I know some people do, but that's what I've got.
Well, that's a good transition because I have September 5 in my 5th spot.
Oh, you do?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, you bring up, it was a really, I'm actually even bouncing. I still don't think Challengers is out of this at all. I still think Challengers could snag that. It's a really good screenplay. It would be one of my favorites of the lineup. Like you said, Mike Leigh, man, what has he got? 6 or 5 now?
It might be 5. Okay. I'd have to look.
I mean, that is impressive for screenplay. So he's beloved in this branch.
More than all of the other nominees combined, because I think all the other nominees will be their first nomination.
Exactly.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
I'm torn on this because I think that I think what we're looking for is like what's the May December spot. There are so many there's so many examples of movies that just get in for their screenplay, and will that be one of the people here? I think Jack would probably say and I don't know, Ryan, what you think overall. This could be the one place September 5 is honored. And that might be where they want to honor it. I think that, I can't tell you the last time that a movie only got one nomination for Best Picture, which Nickel Boys and September 5 got at the Golden Globes. So it seems like there's love for that movie, but in weird contradictory ways. And so right now, I feel like I'm more leaning on the Jack train with Hard Truths in my fifth position because it does feel like Mike Leigh has a pedigree. I think people really respond to. It reminds me a little bit of Living in that regard, the film from 2 years ago with Bill Nighy, where I think, they were paying attention to the screenwriter, that he had won a Nobel Prize, and it's, the movie doesn't need the biggest platform in order for it to do well with the writer's branch. I think right now also challengers, I'm just really torn with. I think the actors on actors that Nicole Kidman did with Zendaya revealed that there is still a lot of passion for that film. Nicole Kidman, though, I don't know, it's hard to judge her because she's such a cool person. She might not be, representative of the Academy, but she really did love the film. And that could be a sentiment now that queer starts to fade more and more into the background. Maybe there's a rise in challengers love. But I worry it's going to be The Bridesmaid in many of these categories and be that number 6 spot. So right now I'm going to go with Hard Truths. I think it's the movie that more people are talking about now. And Jack is right. Even if Maureen Jean-Baptiste doesn't get into Best Actress, at least people are talking about her. She is getting in other places. I just think there's more a conversation and more respect for that screenwriter in particular.
Yeah, if you have Baptiste and it makes sense to put her in your screenplay. If Challengers got that Critics' Choice Best Film, maybe I'd feel a little bit more confident to throw that in there. That was kind of a pretty big miss for Challengers. I have a stat, though, more annoying stats for you guys. 18 out of the last 20 of these screenplay nominations were Best Picture nominated. So it does kind of make sense for me to kind of go, well, if September 5th could snag maybe that 10th spot, maybe September 5th is kind of going in with that screenplay. And then I got one more here. Since 2020, and this is with a grain of salt because Golden Globes, the new membership has changed the stats. But since 2020, all Best Drama Golden Globe noms have been nominated in picture. For my count, 19 out of the last 21 Best Drama at Golden Globes got a screenplay nomination at the Oscars. That's a pretty interesting one, I thought.
But it's funny because now that they do 6 nominees too, it's like, well, the fact that we could talk about Maureen Jean-Baptiste not getting in is like crazy because it's like you have 6 and you split between drama and comedy and musical and you still left somebody off. I mean, that just shows you how strong actress is this year.
Right.
But yeah, I think those stats are true. So I just don't know. I'm interested, Ryan, what you think, because you seem to be the most supportive of September 5. Is that something that is playing more to the mainstream Academy? Do you think it grabs the indie? Because at its roots, it's an independent film. The fact that Paramount ended up picking it up at the last minute, kind of warps how we view that film. But I feel like at its core, it has an independent spirit to it. I just don't know which group is going to respond to that movie. Is it going to be the actors, the writers? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I moderately enjoy the movie. I'm not totally crazy on September 5, but if it's going to be recognized anywhere, I did find the writing to be the place it would be recognized with. It's a dialogue-driven piece. Also, for me, it's just showing up in places that I didn't expect to see it at. Critics' Choice, they have it in screenplay, right? So that's kind of gave me a little bit more faith to put it in there. I'm not 100% on September 5th. I really do feel like it could be Challengers, could be Hard Truths. I'm waiting on BAFTA to see what BAFTA does. I think it's a pretty good chance that BAFTA will go for Hard Truths. It's just a matter of will they recognize September 5? Most likely not. September 5 doesn't qualify for WGA, so it's not going to win there.
Okay. WGA always helping us out. I'll never forget when we were like, WGA is going to make this 2018 race clear, and they gave it to 8th grade. It was like, well, thank you very much for nothing.
Okay, let's now move to adapted screenplay. I don't think we have to think about it that hard, for me at least. I went with the Critics' Choice 6, Conclave, Sing Sing, Nickel Boys, Amelia Perez, and I have Dune Part 2 in my 5. What do you guys have? Is there any differences?
I have one.
Oh.
Well, just because I think it's going to come down to which musical. I feel like it's either Amelia Perez or Wicked, and I think that right now you can make the argument either way. I'm curious what you guys think, because I think the Golden Globes it's kind of similar to The Substance. I think it kind of changed people's minds, because I think some people were thinking, probably a lot of people out of the film Twitterverse were thinking Amelia Perez is on the way down, and then it becomes like the runner-up to the most Golden Globe nominated movie in history behind Nashville, and I think that improved its opinion. And so I really don't necessarily know exactly where it's going to be when we get to Oscar morning. So I'm torn, because I do think that Amelia Perez, they tend to not go for musicals in the screenplay category. So it's funny that, we're down to, 2 of these. Amelia Perez definitely feels more like an independent film with music compared to Wicked, which feels like a musical with a capital M. So I'm torn. I do think there's right now more momentum towards Wicked, and Wicked feels to me very much like Top Gun Maverick getting in for screenplay. And there are large chunks, where there's not a lot of music to that movie. And there's a lot. I think the themes of that movie are getting more introspection post-election. These ideas about authoritarianism, and the way to bring people together is to bring them one good enemy. And so right now, I'm feeling a lot more support for that. I also just think because Wicked, I don't think is going to factor into directing, but I do think they're going to want to see it in one of these top categories other than picture and the two actors, of course. So I'm feeling I'll go out on a limb and say that I think it's going to get that fifth spot and take it away from Amelia Perez. I also think that if Nickel Boys starts to falter more and starts to fall off the radar, maybe Nickel Boys falls off and both the musicals get in. I think that's also a possibility.
Maybe. My thing is I feel like I'm not willing, especially because musicals usually don't get screenplay at all. I'm not right now going to put both of them in there. And between the two, I feel like looking at what the writers tend to do, I feel like they'll appreciate Amelia Perez a little bit more because it's will be seen as more original. And Wicked, it'll just kind of be seen as just more adapting the stage play, whereas I think Amelia Perez is more, or even though it's adapted screenplay, more of like an original story. So that's what I'm going with for of the two musicals. And then the only other difference is I'm not putting Dune Part 2 in screenplay right now. I'm
Oh,
comparing Dune Part 2 to a Two Towers trajectory. I do really feel like that film is, I feel like it's going to continue to underperform. I know lots of us had Denis in a few weeks ago and then he missed Globe. And I think everyone's like, okay, he's not going to get in. I feel like it's just going to continue to go down. And Two Towers didn't get screenplay here. I just feel like it. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's completely safe here for me. So I just go with a complete unknown, even though music
interesting.
biopics don't usually do great here. It is written by Jay Cox, who has gotten two nominations for screenplay before, and I needed when I have it in Best Picture, I needed it to get any other nominations besides Timmy, Ed Norton, and Sound, which were the only other ones I had. So I was like, okay, I can throw it in screenplay. It'll get the WJ nom. It is eligible there, unlike a lot of the other films. And it's not like music biopic-esque films haven't gotten screenplay before. I think Straight Outta Compton got a screenplay nomination. I
Oh,
guess you
it
could
did.
kind of compare Maestro to
Momentous
a music biopic.
nomination for that
So
movie.
yeah,
Jack, I
yeah,
think A Complete Unknown is a great choice. It's ranked actually way lower than it should be on Gold Derby, below
it
Piano
is.
Lesson, below Wild
I know.
Robot. It's
Yeah,
eligible for WGA. It's very likely to be nominated because of that. So yeah, I think A Complete Unknown. I currently have that seventh. I think that's a great option. I do have Wicked at six. But like you said, if the front runners in this category are Best Picture contenders, I think it's smart to shove as many Best Pictures in this category as you can. That's usually what they do. And if they don't have enough, then they start dipping into the bucket and see what else do we have that are not, Best Picture movies.
yeah.
I remember last year, I think Killers of the Flower Moon got snubbed, but they snubbed it for another Best Picture contender, Zone of Interest. So, yeah, I'm not really ready to give up on Dune Part 2 quite yet. I know it's been missing a few places. I can see the Two Towers comparison. I'm just wondering whether Golden Globes is kind of screwing with everybody's head. I do think that he's easily going to get DGA. I don't know. I'm not willing to give up on it quite yet, and I'm even considering putting Villeneuve back in my director lineup. But maybe
I'm
you're right.
curious. I'm curious for both of you because I think Jack's Two Towers comment is applicable here. But I think the thing with Two Towers is that everybody knew within a year this thing is wrapping up. They were very clear. Return of the King is coming out 1 year after Two Towers. So it's like Fellowship was the beginning of it all, was the fresh start, and then Return of the King was going to be the momentous conclusion. And I think everybody had the feeling because they were made at one time that there was no world where the third part is that much worse than the first two. I don't know if Dune is being perceived in that way. I know people. I think people know that there maybe is a part three coming, but if people read the book, this is the end of this book. There isn't, I think, the same thing of like, well, we know we're getting a third one, and we know it's going to be at the same level. Like, I wonder how that's perceived. I do also question Dune getting in the screenplay for the first one. Did that speak more to the pandemic and the fact that we had a limited crop in 2021? It's something to consider when we're now back in the throes of a. But you could also argue we're in the strike, blip right now. So it's always going to be something.
Yeah, I'd say the crop here is pretty limited too, honestly, in terms of what could get in, especially adapted. I think it's pretty barren.
I think the early release really does. I think a lot of voters do have. When you ask a child what's your favorite movie they've ever seen, and they always mention the last movie they just saw last week is like their favorite movie. I do
Yeah,
feel like there's a little bit of that with voters where if a movie came out in February, good freaking luck on trying to get that momentum going back at the end of the year because you got all these new shiny toys out to play with. And I don't think they have. I think that's just what's hurting Dune, in my opinion. I think movies can survive that, but it makes it much more difficult. It's an uphill battle to survive that.
I think
Yeah.
it's a surprise. I think the fact that Dune Part 2 was great is not a surprise. We saw Dune, we saw Denis Villeneuve, Arrival, you know, it's not a surprise that that movie is great. Where I think the thing that's helping Wicked the most is surprise. I think people are surprised. People who don't know this musical, people who just know it as, oh, this is what Frozen, was based on. I think that's what's helping that movie. I think more so than ever. I think people are also surprised to be enjoying a big budget movie musical. I mean, we got to go back to what Greatest Showman, and that was certainly not in the Oscar campaign for have a big box office hit be a live action musical. So and then before that, La La Land. So I think that's what I feel like I'm responding to. Is I feel people are more excited to talk about Wicked and even Amelia Perez. I think that's more of a conversation starter, despite its more polarizing nature.
Yeah, I going back to Dune, I remembered what I was going to say. Sequels, they don't usually get in here. Like, well, sequels can, but straight up like part twos that are coming out within like 2 or 3 years of the last one usually don't get in here. The only like sequels per se that you can mention are Logan, Top Gun Maverick, Borat 2, Toy Story 3. They're not really quite the same in my opinion as a Dune Part 2, which was nominated what 3 years ago in this category at this point. I think the writers might be like, let's give it to something fresher, newer, like Emilia Perez or even A Complete Unknown, something like that, rather than Dune, which was here just a few years ago.
Really quick, right off the top, really quick. Dune Part 2, Wicked, A Complete Unknown. Out of those three, who's most likely to get director, in your opinion?
Probably
Ooh, that is a
Dune.
really good
I think
question.
Denis.
Because I'm thinking that's why it's my fifth spot, Dune, because if there's no chatter around Wicked, really, no serious chatter, maybe there's a chance that he gets in. If there's no real serious chatter about Mangold getting in for Complete Unknown, there's at least some conversation about Villeneuve and director.
Because that could speak to an overall feeling with Dune. When we looked at like Everything Everywhere, that did so well in categories that we didn't expect because all the individual branches that were voting just loved the movie so much that they voted the ones that made sense for the category. But they're like, you know what? Just throw in Everything Everywhere because we love that movie and that's our favorite. So that could be what happens with Dune Part Two is that it has enough support just as an overall picture that it manages to sneak into this five. It's interesting the directing parallel.
Let's move over to cinematography. So yeah, so they tend to lean a little bit. Best Picture nominees, not all the time, for the most part. Oscars do like to throw in an El Conde in there and a Bardo every so often, which I love. I'm not gonna say that this branch always chooses the best, but I do think they pick very good-looking movies most of the time. So I think we both have, I'm gonna imagine, Brutalist, Dune Part 2. I'm gonna say you probably have Maria.
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think this is the two spots you can just shove a couple things in there. I know that you have Nickel Boys because a lot of people have Nickel Boys, right?
I
I do
do.
not.
I have it winning. That might be a little hope dicting for me, but I feel like the nomination is the hurdle. And then I think kind of like Zone of Interest last year, if it like Zone of Interest, the defining part of that film was the sound, so much so that I was able to overcome Oppenheimer somehow in that category and win. I feel like the defining aspect of Nickel Boys is the cinematography, that if it gets in there, it's like that is the part of the movie that we want to honor. And looking at I mean, The Brutalist is its biggest competitor. I don't really see anyone else winning here, honestly. I think Maria would just be kind of like an Ed Lockman narrative, but I feel like that film is too small and most people will probably honestly watch it at home, which hurts it, especially for cinematography. I think it'll get nominated, but I don't think that'll be a winning thing. So
There's a world where Angelina misses. I just think that Maria, I just don't think is performing even to the level that Jackie did, or even Spencer. So
yeah.
I don't see a win there. The one thing I will kind of push back against is that I think as much as if you go back and watch our show, though I don't know who would be crazy enough to rewatch old, you know, hour-long episodes about previous award seasons. Though who knows, maybe that's in our audience. I think we were both very much in support of the Zone of Interest sound win. But I think I would speak more to that because I think Oppenheimer was so dominant in so many categories that they felt this was one that it didn't have to win. I think it spoke more to Oppenheimer doing so well than Zone of Interest being, that, legendary that it grabbed a hold of the
I think you
Oscar
could say
vote.
the same about Brutalist too. I think that's competitive in a lot of other categories.
Yes, but I don't see a world where Brutalist wins 7 Academy Awards. I mean, we'll see.
No, no.
That would be an incredible day, and certainly one that I think would be a wonderful message for the Academy. Make $10 million movies, and look what you can accomplish. It's one of the reasons why I'm very excited for that film. So that would be my one worry. I don't know about you, Ryan. I currently don't have Nickel Boys getting in there. I do think that it's in the it's in the running, but I get the sense that people are going to be turned off. There are going to be enough people that are turned off by that choice and that vision that it's not going to come through. I wonder if the cinematographers look at that in their branch and think it's a little bit too gimmicky.
Yep. I that's the reason why I currently do have Nickel Boys out. I saw Maria the other day. First of all, I thought the cinematography in Maria was fantastic. I didn't love the movie, but that cinematography, man, that pulled me through the entire movie. I'm like, why am I still watching this? I'm like, oh, the cinematography. It's
Autumn
actually
vibes,
very
man.
good. Yeah,
Some great autumn vibes.
absolutely. In my fourth and fifth spot, I actually have Girl with the Needle, and then I have Conclave. So yeah, I agree that there's a little bit of like these branches. I don't know if they're gonna respect putting harnesses on their actors. You know, literally putting the whole gear on them. I don't know. It feels like
He's a new cinematographer too. It's not like he's got a long track record, and this is a
yeah.
branch that does like established cinematographers. So I do think the nomination is definitely the hurdle for the film.
Yeah, I remember everyone was saying, "Oh, Top Gun Maverick, they're putting cameras on jets.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But then that didn't make it, right? I don't believe that
That
made
did
it.
not.
No, it
Tar
So,
missed.
got in,
Yeah.
which
I
I will wear that proudly for the rest of my time. That I some for some reason was like, yeah, Tar's gonna get in. I was very happy with that. I want to bringing up Tar. I want because I also have Conclave in because that feels very much
Yes.
like there are. It's very well framed, and there are certain images in that film that I think I can recall
The
so
umbrellas.
vividly when they're all walking of that high angle shot of them walking around that fountain. There are many shots with just like one pope, sitting up against a wall, or Isabella Rossellini dead center. I just think the framing, it's not the flashiest, but I do think cinematographers will take note of how visually interesting that movie is in one location, essentially.
yeah, it's not a
um,
very colorful movie by any means, but the compositions, like you said, there's striking compositions and imagery there. I really think Joker 2, say what you want, I think this deserves a spot in cinematography,
Yeah.
in my opinion, but I can understand why it's not here. Some people have Amelia Perez in here, and last year I took out El Conde for Zone of Interest because I saw this behind the scenes of how innovative shooting Zone was, and but deep down I knew that movie was too ugly to be nominated. Like I just knew, like color wise,
Yeah.
and when it didn't get nominated, I was like, oh my god, why'd
Also,
I?
the soul of the movie is it's not a pleasant watch,
Right.
how many
No.
um I think the other big one that I'm toying with is Nosferatu, because I do
Yes.
think craft wise I think that could do very well. I think that could show up in a number of the crafts. I think there is definitely a love for classic cinema, and I think similar. Nosferatu is honestly giving me some El Conde vibes. There's it's the type of movie that you feel like could be in black and white very easily. And so I think that's, and also, The Lighthouse got in 2019. It was the sole nomination for that film. So, it's not like Robert Eggers is, untouchable by the Academy. They have taken an interest in his work with The Lighthouse, and they gave it this category, that the nomination. So again, it's one of those situations where Amelia Perez could overperform. It could get in here. It could power the dog this thing and just get into categories that we're just not anticipating because it is that well beloved. But I also think that you know nominations like El Conde and Tar, I feel like the branches are looking deeper than just the Gold Derby top five and Best Picture.
I have Nosferatu and Conclave both in there. The one I have missing that I think both of you guys have in there is once again Dune 2. I'm gonna continue the
Wow.
underperforming. I know lots of people have
Wow,
it
Jack!
winning here. I
Oh my!
know. I'm gonna continue the Two
Blink
Towers
twice if you're
comparison.
being held hostage.
Held hostage by I don't know who,
He's
not
just already
Denis.
skipping the step where BAFTA snubs at all these places, so he's just already getting there.
Yeah, I'm ahead of the game, I guess. I think sequels don't do well here. Like Top Gun ended up missing here. Avatar 2 didn't get in here. The only recent nominated sequels that I can think of are what Blade Runner 2049, I guess, and
That
Mad
was a
Max Fury Road.
that was a
And
Deacon's
both
win. Like that
Yeah,
was
that was Deakins.
I'm pretty sure
And I feel
Shrek 2
like
got in this category.
oh yeah, that's too far back though. That wasn't under the preferential ballot. Yeah, but I just feel like those were kind of also seen as more of like a fresh take and an upgrade on the franchise, whereas I guess the other sequels here are Skyfall got in and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince got in as well. But those were both first nominations for those franchises. Same for Mad Max and Blade Runner. Those were also the first nominations for those franchises, whereas Dune has been nominated here and previous sequels I don't know. I'm not feeling. I feel like a lot of people, especially cinematographers, they gave it the win last time too. They're going to be like, this film, it looks great, but it looks similar to the first one. It's not like there's a few black and white scenes, but I don't know. I feel like they're going to be like, we've honored this before. Let's give it to a Conclave or maybe even a Girl with the Needle
Which
rather
really
than
never makes
Dune.
sense to me. Like when they award someone, like, award them the award, it's the best cinematography, and then they do something
Yeah,
similar, and they're not even going to nominate him. Like, so he's no longer
yeah.
good. Like, I don't really get that,
No,
but okay.
I don't either. But that's
they've
what
got
they tend to do.
there's somebody else who could benefit, because I go back and forth with this all the time. It's like, you want to honor the best in every year, and if that happens to be Meryl Streep, then she gets nominated. But there's also, are we preventing the next Meryl Streep from rising because we're not supporting them? We're not looking for their first time up at bat. It's an ebb and the flow. I don't know. I think there's enough in Dune Part Two visually that is different. You have the introduction of Austin Butler's character, and how that, and just the idea of how they shot that. I believe with the infrared cameras. Like, I think cinematographers could go crazy for that. At the Bake Off, and trying to impress voters with that story. I think because the movie spends so much time really in the dunes, you got the sandworms in there. I think there's enough differences in the look of the film that I could see it getting in. I still have it getting in. I would be pretty surprised if it misses this. Underperforming in directing, maybe screenplay, but if it misses this, I mean, this would be a very sad day for the Dune heads.
All right, let's move on to costume design. So usually Critics' Choice is not too far off from the eventual nominees from what I saw. Typically they get about 4 out of 5 right. This year we have 6 nominations. The discrepancy seems to be when the Academy throws a bone to kind of a classy period piece film. So while Critics' Choice went for Wonka, the Academy will go for something safer like maybe Oppenheimer, or while Critics' Choice will go for Glass Onion or Woman King, the Academy will give their 5th slot to a film like Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. So right here, I'm actually going to go with the Critics' Choice 5. I have Wicked, Dune Part 2, Gladiator 2. I have Maria, and I have Nosferatu. What do you guys have?
I've got that same 5. Feel
Yeah,
pretty
so
good.
you don't have Conclave in there.
No, I feel like Conclave. I just feel like the other ones feel a little showier to me. Conclave, they're all wearing similar stuff. I have Conclave doing well in some other tech categories, whereas here I feel like Nosferatu, especially like the period piece and stuff like that, I feel like they'll totally go for the costumes in that. Maria, she's wearing throughout the film a bunch of different gowns and stuff that I think they'll like. And I'll give Dune this category. I do have Dune getting in here, there, especially Florence Pugh's outfits are great.
Wow, it's so nice of you,
I'll
Jack.
give it, yeah, of course. I'll
Randall's
give it
there a
this.
little bit. I'd say the one that I am looking out for is The Brutalist. I think when you look at those costumes, I think that is the type of film that I think, especially because it's told over time, I think that's your Oppenheimer. That's the suit and tie movie that I think has deeper layers if you look into it. And because I think it is so competitive as a top tier Best Picture contender, this is what we're talking about. It could be the sort of thing that it literally rides the coattails into this category. Especially because I do think Gladiator 2 is falling, though I do think,
Yeah.
Napoleon's performance last year, the fact that it did do well as part of this Thanksgiving storm of box office does help it. So I'm not going to be surprised if it does get in there, but if it misses for something like The Brutalist, I would not be. I would. My eyebrows wouldn't raise that much.
I think The Brutalist is a good option. I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head. I don't know. Power of the Dog, did that get in for costumes?
Believe it did, right? Yeah.
I think it got pretty much
Some,
everything it could, if I recall.
let me
I
see.
feel like
Got
that's
it got
included.
12, so it had to kind of run the table.
Or
It
Irishman.
did not though.
Got
Okay, it
production
did not.
design.
It got everything else. It got best animated short, but it didn't get costume.
Yeah.
All right. I could see that being on the cusp, though. That wasn't really on my radar, but I do see your point. If it's going to run the gauntlet in other nominations, overperform, I do agree with what you said with Conclave too. Like the idea that there's just a lot of robes. There's a lot of copy and paste robes throughout the
Yeah.
entire film. So I think they like to see variety, like you mentioned. I'm thinking an outside chance actually might be Amelia Perez, because I do remember Zoe Saldana had that kind of iconic red suit.
Yeah.
That is one thing I really did like in Amelia Perez, was that red suit. Maybe that's something, maybe there's an association with womanhood with that film, and they kind of bring that in with costumes. I don't know.
This is the
And if
hardship of not having a front runner, because we really just don't know which direction they're going to lean more into. Because that, I think, when you look at where these surprises come from, they're either like these very small movies, like Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris or Cyrano, like they're managed just to pop in here, or it's the movie that is just doing so well that we just didn't realize would overperform. I'm trying to remember whether we knew whether it was like people felt that La La Land would get 2 songs, but that would be something for Amelia Perez. If Amelia Perez gets 2 songs, it's like, oh wow, okay, we have to take this more seriously. And so right now we're just we're around blind, looking for a front runner. If any would like to raise their hand.
But you guys feel pretty good about Maria. That maybe could miss. I know Jackie was nominated in this.
Yeah, I just feel like
could be vulnerable.
it could miss. It is my number 5, but I just looking at the other options, I feel like it's still better showier costume work than Blitz. I could maybe see a Complete Unknown if you're trying to give it a few more nominations. It is a period piece, and the costumes are well done, I think, from what I've seen. So I could consider that. I know some people are also considering Beetlejuice here. I've seen some people think about that. Maybe I feel like looking at the other films that I do have, I feel like there's maybe more prestige around those compared to Beetlejuice, that I'm not going to go for that in that category.
Listen, Colleen Atwood, I think, is in that top echelon of costume designers. I mean, I will never forget the only win for the Harry Potter franchise was Fantastic Beasts in costume design, beating out La La Land in 2016. So I think they love her, and this definitely has one of the more unique costumes. So I wouldn't necessarily throw it out, because it was also a big box office hit, and it could get into makeup as well. It could get 2 nominations when all is said and done. I think it's smart to bring it up, because I do think, like we were talking about it with Golden Globe, like Michael Keaton just never felt like an actual nominee for Best Actor musical comedy, but that doesn't mean it won't pop up within the guilds, and and it could show up here.
Alice in Wonderland, right? Didn't that win this one?
She's
right?
I mean, listen, she's one of the best. She really, her, Jacqueline Duran, Jenny Beavan, there's one I'm forgetting, Sandy Powell. They're she's part of that group. So whenever Colleen Atwood does anything, I'm always like, well, maybe, you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move over to editing. So this is how I go about editing. I usually just stick any Best Picture nominated action film first. I go with the action films. Then I try to shove in as many other Best Picture nominations as possible. But then if there's nothing else, then I have to go to the most incredible editing of the year, and then kind of put that in there. So since 2010, 65 out of 70 films in this category were all Best Picture nominations. I think that's staggering. That's crazy. Since 2012, out of the last 55 Best Editing nominations, only 4 didn't have an Ace Eddie nomination as well. That's Holdovers, The Father, Spotlight, Dallas Buyers Club. Why don't you guys read out yours really quick?
I am once again going to give Dune its flowers. I'll give Dune. I've got it at number 1 here. I don't feel great about that. I don't actually honestly think it's going to win, but I'm just, with this category in particular, I always go, even though it's broke the last 2 years, the sound correlation, oftentimes what is winning sound is usually what's winning editing. So that's kind of why I have it out front. So I'm not confident about it, but that's what I have at 1. Amelia Perez is what I could maybe see challenging it here if it's as strong as we might think. It'll definitely get that sound nomination. It's got some really flashy editing in it, and I do think it's going to end up being a top 3 picture contender, so which Dune isn't. So I could see that winning. Conclave, I feel like it's like a thriller. It's well edited. I think it's a top tier picture contender, so I'll have it in there. Same with Anora. It doesn't seem like a winner here, but it's a top picture contender. And then that final spot, this is where I do think I have challengers. Instead of Screenplay, I have it getting editing here. Because it's rare for a non-picture film, like you said, to get in here, but I feel like the editing is just so great with the time jumping, how it's structured. It's super showy. King Richard, a fellow tennis movie, got an editing nomination. And I think so far it has the second most wins in this category behind Dune. So I think it's doing really well. It got that Ace nomination. Just looking at the alternatives, I feel pretty good about challengers, honestly.
And yeah, so you don't have The Brutalist in there.
I do not. It missed Ace, which has me kind of worried about it.
And it's long, for those of you who don't know. And we've seen sometimes longer movies miss out on this category, maybe because they take that as a strike against. I always think that it's a feat when you can edit a movie that is that long and it works as a picture and it's riveting and it's moving. But I look back at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was going into Oscar nominations, was everybody's front runner. It just had won Critics' Choice, and
Yes.
then it misses editing,
Yes.
and it kind of shook everybody into being like, oh, so this is 1917 versus Parasite, and that I really think that was where the bellwether changed.
Yeah.
And so I do think there are a couple movies that are really vying to be in editing so that they can really be taken seriously in a non-front runner year best picture. I think Emilia Perez really wants to be here. I think Brutalist really wants to be here. I think Wicked really wants to be here. And it's odd because you'll have Green Book got into this category. So sometimes this is where we see the sign. We're like, maybe it's not the flashiest editing, but again speaks of that overall love for the movie.
Yes.
I like challengers being in here because it reminds me a little bit of Tick Tick Boom, which did not
Hmm.
get to picture, but was flashy enough and respected enough that it did get in. My worry though is that again, did challenges come out too early? Are people paying attention to it? I think honestly more than the tennis sequences, the fact that the movie is sometimes bouncing back and forth in between bouncing back and forth. Like it'll have
Yeah.
flashbacks in flashbacks, and I never got lost. I think that's the feat of the editing.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. I actually didn't really think about the structure of the timeline and how
yeah.
well it was done. Yeah.
Yeah, so if people look at the movie holistically, then yes, I think Challenger certainly deserves a nomination here. Will they give it that respect? I hope so. I hope there's a second wind. I don't know if I'm so confident enough, but I do. When I look at that and I look at the tick tick boom thing that you don't. Sometimes when it is so flashy, it doesn't need all around support.
Sure.
Just I don't. We would have to go back in the stat. When was the last time a movie only got one nomination and it was for its editing? Because the music
Oh, that's
is
true. Well, it'll get score. Spoiler, but score.
Score.
nobody has ever put more on the music branch other than Diane Warren than I think the Challengers team. They're really hoping.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's we
Yeah.
talk about, going back to Wonder Woman is a great example of a movie that wasn't in contention with a lot of these other categories that I think then took
Yeah.
it out of contention in costume design all the way up to best picture. You need support all around to try and get, build your Oscar package. You can't just put all your hopes on one because then you could end up coming short. People aren't talking about you enough.
Is there a chance if the substance overperforms and got the Eddie? Is there a chance that
God,
this
I
can
hope
sneak in
so.
there?
It
I
didn't even get the
really do.
sound shortlist, which has me worried. I do think those
That's
categories are connected, and I can't think of the last. I know Everything Everywhere didn't get sound nominated, but it still at least got shortlisted there, and it still won editing. But to not even be shortlisted for sound kind of has me like, that's kind of iffy.
the one reason I have that I don't feel confident on the substance getting in here is I would say Get Out was a very much more obvious top contender than the substance was. I feel like the substance is trying to get into that spot. I think Get Out was very clearly implanting itself as kind of a top five contender. The Get Out did not get this category. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards it not being really very
Yeah.
possible.
I think what's so unique about the substance and why I think it is such a interesting contender this year is that I feel like with that sort of movie, we always tend to look at it as it has to do well with the text first, and then it jumps up. But it's reversed. I feel like its best chances are Demi Moore and the screenplay and the narrative that her character represents within the industry, within female actors. And so that's what I think is so fascinating about that sort of movie is that you think that, oh, if it's getting in for screenplay and and actress and maybe director and maybe picture, then of course editing comes along. But it's just it's the perception of where is that movie being perceived first in the Oscar conversation. And I think Get Out was the same way. Get Out was looked at as auteur, director, writer, picture sort of thing. And because I think editing, score. I think there was production design. There were many places I think Get Out could have gotten in, but it
Yeah,
wasn't. It was looked at as more in the other direction. So it's something to keep in mind. The shortlist thing really threw me for a loop. They went all
absolutely.
Alien and Romulus had a better morning with the
Yeah.
shortlist than the substance. Never did I think that was a possibility.
So did Deadpool and Wolverine, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
The substance did as well as
um,
Joker too.
oh,
Oh brother,
wow.
that's a
Wow.
headline you don't want in the morning.
All right, well, let's talk about a category though, which is looking really good for the substance. We're talking about makeup. I don't really have any interesting stats about this category. Leave them in the comments if you do. I do think I remember something about the winner at the Oscars usually wins somewhere at the makeup artist and hairstyling awards. I do remember something like that, but that might have been broken with Tammy Faye. I don't know. Leave it in the comments below if you have any stats about that. But I have The Substance. I have Wicked. I put in Beetlejuice, A Different Man, and for my fifth spot, I put in Amelia Perez. What do you guys have?
Me too. I also put Amelia Perez in that fifth spot just because I think they really like prosthetics in this category in particular. They don't care about the hairstyling at all. I think is what it should really just be makeup at this point. Um, and Amelia Perez, I think that they're promoting it too. The whole transformation of Carlos Sofia Gascon's character, I think, is really the only thing they need to campaign in terms of makeup. And I think because it's going to overperform, this is one of those categories that maybe some people think it can't get in there, and then it does sneak in there, especially because it's a Best Picture film. Then I agree. I also have Substance. I think that will probably win. Beetlejuice, A Different Man, also showy. All of these are showy prosthetic makeup. And then I didn't put Wicked in there because it doesn't, aside from painting her green, there's not really a ton of prosthetic-y makeup. Um,
Okay,
it's a lot more
interesting.
hairstyling in my opinion. So I ended up doing Nosferatu, which I do think, even though it is a horror film, has more of the prosthetic vibes than Wicked does. But I'm tempted to do Wicked because I know Anthony brings this up a lot. Joker, even though it's not super showy makeup, ended up getting in there just because of the
Right out
one
of
character.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I forget if it got in for I think it did get in for makeup. My thing that I always go to is Joker with costume design, which is like that is
Okay.
not only one character, it's one costume that character wears, and it got in.
Hmm.
I feel like for that one Joker costume he wears on the Murray Franklin show in the first film. So the one the stat that I want to bring up is just of the last 3 years, post pandemic, there has been a spot on corollary between best makeup and hairstyling and winning an acting award. Is it Tammy Faye, Jessica Chastain, The Whale, Brendan Fraser, Emma Stone winning Poor Things, and so I think that's worth bringing up because I tend to be like, okay, what's the transformation that then could show up in acting? Because then you could see that that
Michael Keaton in Beetlejuice,
yes, of
obviously.
course.
Exactly.
Um, that's one of the things that I think keeps Demi Moore in the conversation a little bit is just because
Interesting. Yes,
there's a
love that.
conversation about the transformation, what that means contextually within the film.
Carla as well.
Carla as well. The Amelia Perez thing, I'm not against it. I just think that there's so much honoring the makeup with that is such a loaded question that I'm interested to see if the makeup branch wants to delve into. And that goes just overall to our question of how polarizing is Amelia Perez at its core. How much are people wanting to engage with it? This is going to be a really interesting category for that question. I do have right now this between The Substance and Wicked. I think I agree with what Jack says that hairstyling usually doesn't come into play, but I think there is so much about this performance and taking this character and really rooting her in Cynthia Erivo's experience as a black woman. She talks about wanting the micro braids on her hair, and I think that is a conversation that I think goes beyond just the traditional fantasy makeup and hairstyling. Jack and I have talked about this because of Cynthia Erivo's persona. When you put her, if you're looking at the movies, it's a separate question. But if you're looking at her herself, I think she is an actor who I think many people want to award. And if Cynthia Erivo is able to build a late stage momentum for her Best Actress win, and is similar to Jessica Chastain did, let's say Cynthia comes in, wins SAG, and then is able to take that to the Oscars, then maybe makeup goes along with it, and there's your acting comparison. Because I don't right now I'm not seeing a
Hmm.
world where Demi Moore wins the category. That's just the Wicked argument. I do think it helps when your main character is the one that has the most makeup. That's again
Hmm.
why Joker. I think you could see a comparison there, and I do think, funnily enough, despite them tonally being as far afield as possible, I think they're going to be looked at in similar ways. I think there's a world where Wicked has a very good nomination total, like Joker did, getting 11, the leader of the field that year, and is a big blockbuster movie that has enough craft elements that gets people excited, and makeup could be one that goes its way. So it's really interesting though to have makeup be this competitive is really exciting.
Yeah. I see the acting thing as more of a coincidence, in my opinion, than an actual stat thing. I think you look at those 3 years, I think it's more of a coincidence that it happened because you look at the previous 3 years before that, Ma Rainey, Viola Davis didn't win, Bombshell, Charlize Theron didn't win, and then Vice, Christian Bale didn't win. So it's not like if you win makeup, you always have to win an acting award. I do think it
Yeah, it's a
just
recent
happened to be
trend.
the last 3 years.
Hmm.
But it's definitely,
I
I
just
think it
I
helps
think
nomination wise.
I remember the two of us. I think we were like, all right, whoever's winning actor between Fraser and Austin Butler
Is
is
winning
winning
makeup.
makeup.
Yeah.
And when the whale won makeup, we were all like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
expletive.
Yep.
I don't want to curse in case that messes up your channel, but we were like, oh
Yeah.
no, here we go. And so it's I think it's an interesting trend that we've seen post pandemic that it's
Yeah.
just keep an eye out for.
I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but I actually don't even. I don't try not to spoil the movie for myself, so I don't really read a lot about movies before I go see it. So I saw Amelia Perez. I came out of that movie. I had no idea that was Carla.
Yeah,
I had
Me
no
too.
idea.
Yeah.
I was
I
trying to see it in the movie because I was like, I feel like there's no way she's best actress if she didn't play the character at the beginning and Zoe Saldana supporting. I was like, she's got to be in it from the beginning.
It's great makeup though.
Let's move on to production design. So why don't you guys read out your production design nominees?
I've got Wicked winning here as well. I've got The Brutalist. I feel like it's all structured around production design and architecture. Gladiator 2. Conclave, I've got in there just because you can't obviously film in the Vatican, so they reconstructed all of these for the movie. And I think it's pretty believable. It's pretty impressive in my opinion. I think that's a great narrative. I think you need to look out for Conclave sneaking in a few of these tech categories. So I feel like
Mhm.
that was one of them. And then Dune. I'll give Dune another nomination in this fastball.
So you have out Nosferatu. Is that right?
I
Yeah.
did. I'm wary about giving Nosferatu too many tech nominations, so I
Okay.
had it missing here.
Uh,
I think Jack summed up the race for me. I think Nosferatu is the one that's kind of clinging on to the category. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning Amelia Perez if it has a really good morning. And it is a musical, and it does have very clear settings throughout.
They
But yeah,
built some of the cities for that too.
yeah. I would be. I mean, if the Brutalist, I feel like the Brutalist getting in here is very similar to Sound of Metal getting into sounds. Like this is what your movie's
Hmm.
about. You better get in this
Yeah,
category.
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's true. The one thing I have currently Nosferatu out. Nosferatu is the last puzzle piece I have yet to see. It's the last movie I need to see for the year. I'm watching it in a couple of days. I'm watching it on Christmas. So yeah, the one thing I noticed though, there's not a lot of horror films that make this category. So I'm really kind of seeing what BAFTA
Yeah.
does. The one thing about Conclave, the reason why I have it out, I know it got Critics' Choice. It's going to be a big Best Picture nominated film. It's not like these kind of indoor movie like Darkest Hour or Imitation Game, Lincoln, Oppenheimer, they all got in. I understand that, but the one thing I did notice is that Conclave is not a period piece. So I just kind of scrolling through the nominees, I noticed that there were hardly any modern. And if they were modern, it was kind of like Barbie or Arrival, something very where a lot of production design was put into it. And yeah, I didn't know that they had to duplicate the Vatican. That definitely was very impressive to me. The Father, that's the one that confuses me. Like I'm always confused The Father got in this category for production design. But yeah, that's the only thing that's really striking me is like I'm not sure because it is a modern film and it's not a period piece technically.
The Nosferatu thing, because I think the horror comment is valid. My comment though is I think when we look at horror movies that tend to get in for Oscar contention, when you look at Silence of the Lambs, To Get Out, they're modern movies. I mean, this is a film that's echoing back
Sure,
to a
sure.
film from 1922. So I think
Hmm.
that the period it's a question of does the period aesthetic trump the horrorness? Um,
Yes.
that
Yes.
almost sounds like a bad word, but the um, the horror
The
quality.
Horness was my name in college, actually.
Oh God. So I feel a little bit better about Nosferatu. I think it benefits from a great release date. And I do think that the craft is going to be pretty hard to ignore. It's really interesting. I is Gladiator 2 for the both of you like a lock? Are
It's
you
not a
that
lock. It's not a
okay?
lock for me, but it's. I feel more confident than I to put it at 4. It's my number 4, but it's not a lock for me.
Yeah, it's my four as well.
Interesting. I feel like just because they pretty much like built an entire city and a huge coliseum, I feel like
Mhm.
this is one of the categories it is stronger in, not for like a win or anything, but just looking at the work as a whole, I feel like it ends up being stronger than especially films like Conclave or even Dune. I feel like Dune it has good production design, but compared to Gladiator 2, Dune's a lot of practical sand rather
Right.
than like
Right.
building an entire city.
All right. Well, Napoleon got in for production design too, right?
Yeah,
Don't remind me.
production design, visual effects, and sound.
I've broken
Oh,
Anthony.
yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
what broke
Yeah.
Anthony was Napoleon getting in for what was it,
Yeah.
3? I was
yeah.
like, oh
It
my
was
god.
3. Yep.
So I feel like if
Listen,
Napoleon can sneak in here and secure that spot, I feel
Yeah.
Gladiator 2 is looking pretty good.
yeah. And I agree
Yeah.
with you. And listen, any Ridley Scott nomination for Gladiator, for Napoleon, for House of Gucci, I'm like, listen, they have so much. He still doesn't have an Oscar win. They have so much to catch up on with Alien and Blade Runner. Sure, have at it. I'm just gonna think that these are nominations for Blade Runner and the legacy of that
Yeah.
film, and I can rest happy.
And you would have felt that way if House of Gucci won Best Picture, right?
Exactly.
Lady
Exactly.
Gaga would have helped with that. Lady Gaga would have made a nice speech, maybe.
Okay, so we're moving on to score. So this category, there's not a whole lot on the table. This is interesting. I didn't even notice this. We got the same nominees at Critics' Choice than Golden Globes. I didn't know that. Same exact nominees. So in theory, we do have a top 6. One of those 6 is Dune Part 2. That was deemed ineligible at the Oscars. So technically, we only have 5. I got Conclave, I got Brutalist, I got Amelia Perez, I got Challengers, and I got Wild Robot. Is that what you guys have?
Me too. Yeah. Seems
All right,
pretty.
this is
Seems almost too easy.
Yeah.
which always scares me, and that's why
Yeah.
usually in these conversations, Jack will one of us will do the easy 5, and then one of us will just mix it up, and it will be like Nickel. And usually this season, it's Nickel Boys or Wicked. That's how
Yeah.
it's been falling. Somebody has to explain to me how Dune Part 2 is ineligible, but Wicked is. I just don't understand that. I've
Yeah.
seen that show many a time. It is almost identical musical cues in some places. But does the majority of people in the music branch know that? I don't know if they do, and if they don't, I would be pretty shocked that the Wicked doesn't get in here. I mean, Mary Poppins Returns got in this category. It got song and score. And so I think if the similarity to the Broadway show does not come up enough, then I do think it could get in there, especially. I mean,
Right.
are we really thinking that Challengers, which we're thinking has to do above average at best to get into these categories, is going to do better than the big Best Picture contending musical?
I don't think that's the one I would kick out, honestly. I think if Wicked gets in, I think I would kick out Wild Robot just because I am hesitant. The last 2 years, we thought like Spider-Verse will get in. We thought maybe even Boy in the Hair, and thought Pinocchio. And I think those were less traditional scores than Wild. I
Pinocchio.
think Wild Robot is a more traditional score than like Spider-Verse and stuff like that. But even then, the animated films have not recently been performing great outside of animated feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing
No,
I would add
I think that's fair.
The only thing too I would add is Critics' Choice, who went really heavy for Wicked. They didn't nominate it here in this category.
Mm.
Because Critics' Choice voting is, I think, very different than like you have your shortlist voting. And I would imagine Wicked looks better when it's already past the shortlist. I think the Critics' Choice, there were probably enough critics who would be like, also maybe there are more people among Critics' Choice who have more familiarity with the musical than there might be in the music branch at the Academy.
I see.
And so I feel like once it's on the short list, then I think it's already gotten that, that patina of support. It's like it's been validated. So because I mean, I feel like that is the thing that would keep it off. If you're just looking at the score itself, if you're in a vacuum and you're listening to these scores, I think there's no denying the music of Wicked is a strong component. So if it's already gotten that sort of validation, and it could be Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, it could just be like, listen, this is something that we just associate with music, and it gets in there despite certain quibbles leading up to the nomination.
A lot of times when I think of score nominees, I always think of just like, can I remember the score right off the top of my head right now? Like, can I sing the melody in my head? And is there a returning motif? That up score, there's that returning motif. And
Yeah.
Conclave, I could remember the music. Brutalist, I could remember it. Challengers, I can remember that music. Wild Robot, it's
Yeah.
the one thing that like made me really convinced that I really love this movie.
Yeah. During that flight scene, that's very memorable. Yeah.
Right. And then Amelia Perez, I struggle to separate what the musical songs are with the score. I don't know if
I
it'll
remember
matter.
the songs. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they'll remember the songs, so maybe that helps get it in.
But I could say the same thing about Mary Poppins Returns. Like I feel like with musicals, sometimes they just think, "Oh yes, it's in the title. It's a musical," and so they just throw it
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. I
I
think
agree with
also
you. Yeah.
Challengers, the compress repress song, I think that has been showing up. I don't know if it'll get into song, but because that's been showing up so frequently, I think that's also probably helps it get in score because they seem to be responding to the music overall in Challengers.
I really worry with the substance and with challengers, we're gonna look back and be like, we tried to make fetch happen, man, and it was never gonna happen. Every time it gets brought up, I'm like, damn it, we're gonna be really. I worry for Jack's health because I remember how he was with
I
Charles
love
Melton,
challengers.
It's so
and
good.
I don't want that to happen again this year.
Just
Um,
score and one of screenplay and editing, and I'll be fine.
yeah,
I'll take that.
Remind me of the supporting actor's name.
He should be
Josh
Josh O'Connor.
Dude, he's
Josh
got.
O'Connor.
I don't know how he's not in this consistently.
He
Like,
should be in winning conversation.
I
It's crazy.
agree.
It's like
I
how
agree.
Mike Faced, speaking of Mike Faced, he should have been in winning conversation for West Side, but
Oh,
who
we should have
knows?
won
absolutely.
that hands down.
Absolutely.
But that's
Yeah.
So let's move over to song. Almost got the same songs at Critics' Choice and Golden Globes. I'm not sure how rare that is, but Golden Globes had Forbidden Road by Robbie Williams. And
Which is
Critics'
now
Choice had
ineligible, apparently.
yes, which is now deemed ineligible. And Critics' Choice had the Kristen Wiig song from Will and Harper, and the shortlist boosted Miley Cyrus's song. So now we might have very similar
boosted or
ones.
booted.
What's that?
Boosted or booted?
Booted.
Like, yeah, okay. I just want to make sure.
And the shortlist boosted Miley Cyrus's song. Boosted Miley Cyrus's song. Boosted.
It's gone.
So what do you guys have for song?
I mean, we have. I think El Mal is. I think right now the runaway contender. I think, and El Mal is improving Zoe Saldana's supporting actress bid. I feel.
Interesting.
Kiss the Sky from The Wild Robot. Diane Warren coming back with the 6888. The song is called The Journey. And then right now I have Amelia Perez getting 2. I think that just speaks to the lack of contenders this year. So Mi Camino would be the second Amelia Perez song. And then I'm torn because I don't think it's going to be Moana 2. I don't think it's going to be Piece by Piece. I think it really comes down to Sing Sing Like a Bird or Will and Harper Go West. I've heard some rumors about the Twister song, but I feel like that it's a little too commercial for them. So I don't know. Right now, I'm gonna go Sing Sing because I just think that we'll have more show. Like I'm curious if does Will and Harper, is that like a celebrity doc and they're not gonna touch it because usually they don't like the celebrity docs, or will they lean more into it? If they do, maybe it does get in because I forget, did American Symphony did that song
It
get
got
in?
song, but not documentary.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe it follows that trajectory. I'm torn right now. Right now, I think there's a clear 4, and that 5th spot's up. And right now, I'm gonna go Sing Sing, but I can be swayed.
Yeah, I don't really have any stats. I don't have any really solid. I don't really have any solid reasons to give you why I have Will and Harper Go West, other than the fact that I thought it was just charming and adorable, and I loved it. And I don't really know if this category really has a bias towards celebrities. Yeah, I mean Kristen Wiig's name on it, that kind of helps a little bit. But yeah, it
There's a
kind of I
bias
think
towards Diane Warren. That's where the bias is.
right. That's true. Yeah, Diane Warren. I actually truly didn't. I didn't really recognize this. She's been nominated every year since 2017. Because I was thinking, could I potentially snub Diane Warren? Let's see how I can snub her. And then I saw that she's been nominated every year since 2017.
It's impossible.
You can't do it. It's the Terminator, so you can't snub her. So yeah, I really just have Will and Harper because I really enjoyed the song. If you're going heavier on Sing Sing, if you think still Sing Sing stands a chance with Picture, if you think that it's gonna not miss Macklin, I can see why you have that in there as well.
I have the same top 4 that you mentioned. I also have Sing Sing in the 5th spot just because I looked at the last 2 years, and there's been like a semi-surprise song that popped up that were both the Killers of a Flower Moon song and the Everything Everywhere song, which were both Best Picture films. So I do kind of looking at the short list here, the song from Sing Sing is really the only potential way I can see that happening. And it's a very good song. It plays over the credits while they're showing all the real life Sing Sing members. So that's what I'm going with right now, but I could easily see
Hey,
Harper and Will go
It's in the
west.
title. Sing Sing music. Maybe that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, well let's cover. We're in the thick of it. We're almost there. We got a few more. So we got sound. Let me go ahead and read out mine. If you have a Best Picture that can relate to sound, I would throw it in there. I got Dune Part 2, I got Wicked, I got A Complete Unknown, I got Amelia Perez, and I got Gladiator 2. 3, it's a musical.
Take it to the
Musicals.
bank.
That's what you
That's
guys
it.
got?
Yeah.
That's my 5.
I got that same 5. I'm really considering Alien Romulus
Yes.
in that
So
6th
am I.
spot just because they really like sci-fi films in sound in particular. Like Ad Astra got in here last year, even The Creator Surprise and got in here. So I'm like
Yeah.
really considering it, but I'm not
What
going
would
to
you
go for
take
it
it out
yet.
for? I'm curious.
Exactly.
I take out
That's the-
Gladiator.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would take out Gladiator 2 as well, but it's kind of a trickier move because you don't want to get it, it's a risk. and I feel pretty good. Like I feel good that I'll get 4 out of 5 of those. All right, well that's cool.
Speaking of a category where Alien Romulus might show up.
That's right. We're moving to visual effects. Let's go ahead and do it. So, what do you guys have for visual effects? Let me go ahead and read out the stats. So, since 2015, 62% of the nominees at the Oscars were nominated at the Critics' Choice. So, I guess not that big of a crossover. The Substance was not included in the shortlist for visual effects. Wild.
Nope.
So, what do you guys have?
Deadpool was.
And Deadpool was. So, you have Deadpool at number 1.
I do not. No, they do nominate some weird stuff here. Like they nominated Free Guy, and I was not a fan of that. But I got Dune winning. I got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in here. I got Gladiator 2. I do have Alien Romulus getting in here. I do think this is where it can sneak in. And I went with Better Man because I feel like they really, for some reason, like the monkey visual effects in here, and the whole like facial tracking and all that stuff.
Why is Anthony laughing at your prediction?
No, I can't believe that argument has now lasted 2 episodes because it debuted on our show, and I'm surprised. The monkey bias lives another
look,
day.
there's you got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, you got Gladiator. You could have Wicked.
This is how you know we're gonna probably.
Wicked.
I'm overthinking it completely. My mind is like, is there room for 2 monkey nominations? I'm just wondering because it's a documentary, right? I haven't seen A Better Man.
It's a narrative feature film.
It is. Okay.
It's for some reason apparently he's a monkey because he feels like a monkey when he's performing. So he's a monkey throughout the whole film.
Okay.
It looks good. It's just as impressive as the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes visual effects. And they do the facial tracking. It's very like he goes through a lot of emotions in the film, and you can see it. So that's why I went with that. And it looks impressive, but I could easily throw Wicked in there. But the visual effects in that didn't really surprise me.
Right. Okay. Well, Anthony, I'm curious because you wouldn't say Better Man. I have Wicked in.
I have Wicked in as well, just because I'm always torn with like what constitutes a visual effect, what's editing, what's cinematography. You know, like I look at 1917 winning this category. I'm like, so the visual effect is film editing, like that's the visual effect. Okay, cool. Okay, fantastic. And so that's why I'm always torn with certain things with this category because I feel like they make up their mind what the visual effects are every year. When it comes to nomination, we know Dune is winning this because if there's a Dune movie or an Avatar movie, it's going to win this category. I have Wicked in. I think the strength as a Best Picture contender, I think does get it into this category up against other movies that I just don't think. I mean, if Wicked is able to, if Better Man is able to surmount Wicked across the board, I would be pretty surprised. And I think people will say, well, what about Black Panther? Black Panther, I think many people talked about the unfortunate visual effects of that third act. I think some people aren't wowed over by Wicked's visual effects, but I don't think anybody came out complaining about the visual effects in the way that they're complaining about the cinematography, which is what I think is costing this big budget musical not in contention for cinematography. And so I have Wicked getting in there. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, I think this is a franchise that routinely gets in. It will never win, but it will get in there. Gladiator 2, Napoleon got into this category last year, so I think that it's clearly going to probably be strong here. And then I have Alien Romulus. I think this is a movie that the shortlist show that they're paying attention to, because the other movie that I think is in contention because of past nominations for this sort of film, especially in this franchise, is Mufasa: The Lion King. But I don't know if they're going to want to touch that movie with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't be surprised if it got in, but I'm as somebody who Alien Romulus was one of their favorite movie-going experiences of this year. I had such a great time in IMAX. I'm really rooting for this movie now, and I do think if you look at it, I mean, there are not only so many great visual effects sequences, but the variety that they have. I mean, you have the creatures, you have the practical effects, immersion. You have the scene where Kaylee Spaney's floating through, the alien acid. Yep. I think there's a lot to show off at the Bake Off. And I think that this is a type of movie that I think is really going to impress people when they look beyond the pixels. And so I think, does that mean, Ryan, we have the same 5?
Yeah, we have the same 5. I have Alien Romulus as well. The one I can see randomly popping up for no reason at all is Civil War for some reason, just because it's very tasteful.
I think it's the first time somebody's described a Civil War as being tasteful.
It's tasteful. All right, well, let's move over to animated feature. So I believe we have the same 5. This could be like the shortest category we talk about. Wild Robot, Inside Out 2, Flow, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance, Most Foul, right?
That's honestly the most locked up category at this point. I don't even know what else it would be.
We could talk alternatives, but I think it'd be a waste of your time. Let's just move on to the next one. Let's move on to international film. So I think it's always very difficult to predict these. I think we have at least the same three. Amelia Perez, Seed of the Sacred Fig, I'm Still Here. What's your
Yeah.
last two spots?
I'm going with Vermiglio. I've seen this one get great reviews. It's from Italy. So I'm throwing that in there. And then I was between Kneecap and
How to
The
Make
Girl with the
Millions.
Needle for the last spot. And that one, I was also considering How to Make Millions when Grandma dies.
And what about you, Anthony? You
Yeah.
kind of agree with that?
Yeah, Girl with the Needle I have in there. I agree with the top three, and Kneecap is the other one that I think is getting some good buzz around it. So right now, I feel like is when we're going to really see the campaign start for some of these movies. To me, at least, this feels a lot more open than other years. I feel like other years, like there feels like a very clear five from the minute we start talking about this category, and I disagree with. I feel like that's not true of this year. So yeah, I mean Amelia Perez is also going to win this. So it's
Yeah.
another year of the best picture contender is going to win the category.
All right. Well, I got the same two as you do. I have Girl with the Needle and I have Vermiglio in fifth. I got the Golden Globe nom for Vermiglio. I have Girl with the Needle getting in my cinematography. I don't know if we ever
Yeah.
mentioned that. I could see that being kind of like White Ribbon of this year. I think White
Yeah.
Ribbon got into international. I hope it did.
The
I
other
think
two
so.
I would just mention quickly because they're going to pop up in other categories is Dahomey and Flow. I think that does help, but I don't think it's it's a flea is not going to happen all the time or a Honeyland where it, pops up all around, but it's worth bringing up because I do think when it comes to international feature, if you are in contention in other categories, it's what we've been talking about. I think it does help you, carve out a space for you in this category.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Matt Downs on Fantasy Film Ball, his YouTube channel, he brought up that Flow really doesn't have any foreign language in it, really.
Besides the
So,
meows, no.
Yeah,
except,
cat
yeah,
No
talk.
foreign.
if it
So I mean,
affects
the category
its
is no
chances.
longer foreign language film; it's international film. But I think
I
it's a
don't know
fair.
how many people will consider Flow though, if it's a silent film, really.
I did myself the joy of going to see Craven the Hunter, and a lot of that is in Russian. I was like, if this was still foreign language film, maybe they could have submitted it. It's could have been their best
Yeah.
shot.
Would have definitely gotten in.
Oh
Something
boy.
about Kneecap feels a little too hip to crack this category for me. It
It
doesn't
does.
feel,
It does.
because I think this category usually is pretty prestigious and very classy choices for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean, look at what you have winning. I mean, Amelia Perez is many things. And woman is
That's fair.
so I think it sometimes it speaks to the mood of the year, but also I think if one thing is not like the other, sometimes that's what makes it stand out.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think there's a chance in hell Amelia Perez gets snubbed in this? Is there a chance?
No, I don't
No.
think so. As fun as it would be, I don't think so. I think that would be so much
This is
fun.
the
But
fun, Mr. Murphy. Yeah, I mean, I every year they're like, what if the best picture contender doesn't win this or misses out? And I just think, they're trying to find, punditry in a category that just doesn't usually necessitate that. I think that Amelia Perez, as much as people find it polarizing, I do think people really respond to it. I think they appreciate the bold swings, the risk of it. Yeah, I would be, especially with Netflix behind it. I mean, Amelia Perez is going to have a campaign behind it for overall, but especially in this category, that all the other movies probably can't add up to if they combine their campaigns. So I don't think we can ignore that either.
So, believe it or not, we made it. We made it. We're in the last category. We're on documentary.
Woo!
What a fun one to end
such
on.
a
I should have ended with one of the
yeah.
bigger ones. So yeah, what do you got? What do you got in your five?
I currently have No Other Land out front, but I'm still iffy on that because it still doesn't have a distributor. It's getting great reviews. It's winning a bunch of like the critic awards, but still no distributor has me a little worried about it. Made the short list. It's topical, so I'm going to keep it at number one, but I'm not confident in that. Daughters on Netflix, I feel like that'll probably get in there. It'll be widely seen. I've got Dahomey getting in there, and then I think I'm going to do Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. That's been getting great reviews, so I feel like I'm going to put that in there. And then I'm going to do Sugarcane. Those were the five that I went with. I was really close on Black Box Diaries, but I feel like the MTV documentaries don't usually do great here. But this could be.
Yes, that was my one concern was the MTV. I do have Black Box
Yeah.
Diaries in. I remember seeing this film at Sundance. I really quite enjoyed it, but that is the one thing I was wondering about is the MTV. Like, is there even an awards team there who's even doing anything?
Yeah. Who maybe.
I share Jack's five. I think people are going to bring up Will and Harper because that probably has the biggest platform out of any of these contenders. but I do think I worry that it fits more into the celebrity documentary group.
Usually
And
those don't make the short list though, like the Superman movie. The making sure the
yeah,
short list here does have me think it could
sure.
get in.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Um, yeah,
Okay.
but I do think, it's interesting because you have your front runner, which probably is is one of the worst positioned, to try and like win
Hmm.
and try to, build up a campaign. Because you have Netflix, you have Mubi with Dahomey. And Mubi's, obviously coming on strong with the substance. So I'm curious to see what happens. But listen, we 2018, I'll never forget this category. This and the directing
Yeah.
branch, they choose their own adventure willingly, and they'll
They
make
always surprise you.
these are this category, this branch is why nobody will ever get 100% on the nominations.
Yeah. Those in the shorts.
Wow, you had me thinking about whether the celebrity docs. I'm gonna have to go look back and see which celebrity docs made shortlist or not. I didn't really
Usually they miss
consider
the
that.
short list, kind of like the Christopher Reeve one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys would agree, but if Will Harper gets in the category, I think it's winning the category.
Yeah, I agree. With Netflix behind it and like with the whole celebrity aspect of it, once you have the entire Academy voting on who wins, I think that would definitely end up winning.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I have to admit, I haven't seen a few of these, so it's really hard to gauge what I should put in. I'm going based off of just buzz and what I'm hearing about. I have
That's what
pretty
puts
much the
also that a
same.
lot of times the people vote.
Yeah,
I feel
exactly.
like it is shocking the amount of times that if we really go through, we could never would be able to. People will be like, "Yeah, I've heard good things nominated." Oh yeah, that my friends in that nominated. I mean, it sometimes
Yeah.
hearing good things is enough to get into these categories, unfortunately.
All right, well, we made it through. We made it through. Is there any other things you guys want to get for chess? Any other hope dictions you want to see? Like, what about SAG? Are you guys hoping for anything for SAG?
I think ensemble at SAG is really tricky in terms of who's going to win there. In between Sing Sing, Amelia Perez, and I think maybe even Honora has a shot. And one thing also, I'm not gonna. I don't want to sound like I'm a super insider. I'm friends with a few people who are SAG members, and when I talk to them about specific movies, one thing I look at, lots of people are really on the Yura Borzov train right now. When I ask any actor I know about that film, the two performances they mention are Mikey Madison and Mark Eidelstein. So I do wonder and worry a little bit about his performance maybe appealing more to like film type people more so than actors, where it's not super showy work. So
I also wonder if Mark, because as viewers of our show will know, I'm a big Mark Eidelstein fan. I think he should definitely be in contention for supporting actor. I wonder if that speaks more to our age and that he speaks more to a
maybe,
younger
yeah.
group, and then Yura Borisov is speaking more to an overall group. It would be incredible if he was able to get into SAG. I think that would definitely cement him in the supporting actor race.
Momentum for sure.
Um, as far as SAG, I think what's going to be really interesting is when we look at the guilds, I see a world where none of the guilds agree. I could see a world where, Directors Guild goes to the Brutalists and Producers Guild goes to, Conclave. And the SAG goes to Wicked and BAFTA goes to something else. Like, I think it's a really interesting season because the guilds are not going to be in alignment.
I agree. This
Plus,
is not going to be a walk season. This is not. We are not in Oppenheimer. And so when I say
it's
that
fun.
when I'm predicting Anora, I'm predicting currently Anora for Best Picture. That's not like take it to the bank. It's winning. It's just what I feel right now. It can change tomorrow. I do think Anora will struggle a bit with SAG, like you said. I don't think Yori is even guaranteed for a nomination there. Mark versus Yori, like it's not really the performance; it's like the characters. Like, what does that character leave you with? It's that feeling
Yeah.
inside. And Mark, you kind of walk away going, "Oh, like he's kind of an ass," and you
Yeah.
walk away with
Hmm.
Honora like being like, "Oh, I love that guy," And a lot of this,
Hmm.
these races are come down to just the emotion of how people feel. It's not so much grading it and what's the best. It's just which film is emotionally driving people. The actors are the biggest branch of the Academy and also the most emotional people
Hmm.
on earth. So,
They are.
thank you guys for coming on the channel. I really appreciate it,
Yeah.
guys. These guys know their stuff. If you are an Oscar lover, if you are not following them already, go to Oscar Forecast, follow them, and watch their stuff. They know their stuff inside and out. But I really appreciate you guys coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us. It was a great time.
Yes, thank you. When you're done watching Ryan's show and you want even more, come over. But yeah, I think Jack and I are really excited. We have we're gonna do our top tens. I think coming up soon. Once we catch up, I think you're a little bit more ahead of us, Ryan. We usually we get together with the guys from Oscar Buzz and we do our own awards. So we have that to look
Awesome.
forward to. And
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. Hey, Oscar lovers, I hope you enjoyed that video. I want to thank Oscar Forecast for coming on. Again, go check out their work. They do great stuff over there at the channel. But other than that, if you guys enjoyed this conversation and want to see more content like this, feel free to hit the subscribe button down below. I got a lot of fun things planned, experiments, and all types of Oscar stuff, reactions. I'm also going to Sundance to review the films there and maybe find next year's A Real Pain. Thanks always for watching, and until next time, I will see you at the Oscars.